Hiya and welcome back. This is part 7 I think of the videos that I'll be making. I was prompted to make this video which is about bringing home new birds, or bringing new birds back into your flock. Several people said to me, when you buy new birds, what do you do with them? Do you just buy them and bring them home and put them in your aviary or with your other birds? No, you never ever do that. So that is one of the things you should never ever do, because you don't know anything about the bird. You mean the people who are selling them to you will tell you anything to sell the bird normally. Some people are honest, but there's very few people out there who really are. This is a cage which I'll probably use in quite a lot of my videos, so this is just really for show. This is just basically a double breeder, thoroughly cleaned out, and it must be ready to go so that when you get your new birds, they can go in there. And you never ever put your if you bring in birds home into your home from outside, from somewhere else, doesn't matter where you get them from, don't get them, put them into your aviary with the other birds straight away, because if they're carrying any parasites, any internal diseases, they may look healthy when you first buy them, but you don't know over a short period of time, especially when they're being stressed from the removal from one place to another, the transportation and a new environment, new sounds, new smells, and it stresses them out, and that's when all of a sudden they feel a bit, then the diseases which they have lurking in them, sort of, they come to the fore basically. I always have a cage like this prepared, it's like I said, it's just a double breeding cage. At the bottom it's got pine wood chips. You can have newspaper if you like, or plain paper, or whatever kind of flooring you like. I try to avoid things like sand. I know I have been told that some people I know that use sand. Sand is really not good, especially if they ingest it, because they can't digest it. It's pretty much glass. Anyway, you want a perch on each side. You don't want it all the way up here and you don't want it down there. You want it about midway. You want perches not right up against the wall, and you need to make sure that the right size perches for their legs, so that they can fit around. You don't want it too big and you don't want it too small. You can have different sizes, and like on one of my other videos I believe I said you can take notches out, so you've got like different diameters all the way through the bar, which is good for them. And I put one on each side, one right next to a drinker, so they can have access to water all the time. And these drinkers, I always religiously have a brand new one, because if you've had this in a cage before with other birds, and one of those birds or more have been ill in the past, you don't know if they've been drinking from this, whether it's hard to explain, but if a bird in the past has been ill and they've been drinking from this, it doesn't matter if you sterilise it. Sometimes some people just boil them or use bleach, and bleach doesn't kill all of the diseases at all. And some diseases are pretty stubborn. They can remain for a long time, and they can get around the sterilising process. So it's always good to have a brand new one, like all set up and ready. And I say it's the residues of any kind of diseases that will be lingering, so it's always good to have a new one. You're going to want a cuttle bone. I know it looks a bit stained, but this is actually a brand new cuttle bone. I've just broke a piece off, just so it's just for show really. And then I always have one of these as well. This is an iodine block. To be honest, finches very rarely eat it, but it's just nice to have it in case they do fancy a nibble. And then another thing I like to have, just to help settle your birds in, is obviously a spray millet. This is Chinese millet. There's all sorts really. Japanese millet, white millet, foxtail I believe it's called. Foxtail is a very good millet. It's probably one of the best, and I've always found it's a red millet, and they prefer it. In fact, they prefer most millets when it's freshly picked, so it's still soft. They don't like it really bone dry. They'll eat it, of course, because there's just something about millet that they're just very addicted to. But, they do seem to prefer the very fresh stuff, where it's still, the kernels inside are still very soft and moist. Anyway, right. So you've got your cage and everything. Before I go into what I put in the water and the food, etc., I will explain something else. Right, let's assuming you just bought one bird. It doesn't matter if you bought one or more. It doesn't make any difference. You're bringing home a bird, etc. And then before you put it in here, which is a quarantine, this is what we would call a quarantine cage. Your birds, when you buy them or when you bring them home, you put them in here for a minimum of 30 days. Some people, like myself, would keep them in there for at least 40 days just to be sure. And while they're in here, you can keep an eye on them, just to see if any illnesses do arise or whatever. And I like to put a 40 to 60 watt light bulb in there. I dangle it just on the inside next to the perch. And if you find one of those birds, or that bird sits next to that light all the time, and I can guarantee you something's wrong with that bird. Yeah, you don't want to see your bird sat next to the light all the time trying to keep warm, because that's a sign of an illness. Unless of course it's generally cold, which it shouldn't be kept in a cold environment anyway. And the cage should be housed. This cage should be housed where it's nice and bright, where it can see the sunlight, but the sunlight doesn't shine through on the bird. So you don't want to cook your birds. They like it nice and bright, where it's plenty of fresh air, but they don't like the cold winds and drafts. And I will say, if you've got pets, especially cats, get them away, because if you've got new birds, the last thing they're going to want to see is a predator. Birds are not stupid. They just have an instinct. They need to be where it's quiet. They don't need kids running backwards and forwards, looking, staring at them, and because the birds think they're instantly being attacked, and they don't want that. You need to let your birds calm down in a nice, safe environment. Let the birds feel safe and happy, and then, then you can keep your eye on them over a period of time. Anyway, getting back to what I was going to say in the beginning. When you've got your birds, the first thing you want to do before you even buy your bird, actually, you want to handle the bird. Before you buy them, ask the person if you can handle the bird, so you can look at them, because you want to look down the chest area, the breast, and the stomach first, and then you're going to want to make sure there's plenty of meat on the bone, around the breast area. Make sure the bone here is not sharp and it feels like that. It shouldn't feel like that. It shouldn't be fat and all pressed in either. It should be almost the same all the way down. So there's meat on each side. When you look at their stomach, you want to on the abdomen area, you want to move the feathers. I don't know if you can see, but you want to move the feathers away on their abdomen so that you can see the state of the stomach. You want to look at the skin texture, the skin colour, and then it should be a nice pinkish, reddish pinky sort of colour, and then it shouldn't be dry either. And you want to look at the quality of the liver, if you have any experience. If you're not sure about what the liver is, or where it looks, whereabouts it is, or what it looks like, you can just Google it, and pretty much all birds are the same wherever they are located anyway. You don't want to see any dark black spots in there I think it's on the right hand side, because that would be probably a sign of circovirus. I think it's pancreas or something like that. Anyway, that's not important. But you want to make sure that the liver is in good condition, the abdomen is all nicely, perfectly shaped, and there's nothing abnormal about it. Check around the neck, make sure there's no lumps and bumps. Check under the wings, make sure the quality of the feathers make sure the feather quality is very good. Another thing you want to check is around the eyes. Make sure the eyes are perfect, wide open as they should be. Make sure there's no blemishes around the eyes as well, any wet spots, poor skin quality. Look around the nostrils, make sure there's no blockages, build up of anything. Make sure there's no moisture there as well, because if there's any kind of liquid moisture, it's a sign that something could be wrong with the bird. Also around the beak as well, check the quality of the beak. Make sure there's no liquid down the side of the beak, around the hair, around the breast area, because that could be again a sign of possibly something like canker or air sac mites. I was just about to say something, and it's just gone straight out of my mind now. If you have got digital weighing scales, it might be a good idea as well to try and weigh the bird. I think for a Gordian, a good sized Gordian is normally about 20 grams, roughly, about 18 to 20 grams. You want to listen to the bird, listen to its breathing, make sure there's no rustly sounds, no clicking noises, no wheezing, no sneezing, no coughing, etc. Again, check all the plumage, lift the tail feather up so you can check the vent area, make sure the vent is nice and clean. The vent is actually the bum hole, I suppose, and make sure that's nice and clean, no dirty feathers. And if you've got them in the cage, if you still have them at that place where you're going to buy them from, look in the cage, look at the poo. If it looks abnormal compared with the normal birds, it should look like a browny, a greeny sort of brown colour with like a small little bit of white around the side of it, which it kind of resembles white toothpaste, and then you should have a little bit of water around it. If it doesn't look like that, or there's like yellow in there and some odd colours, so I'd probably be a bit sketchy about buying the bird. If you get it back and the poo doesn't look right, the chances are something's going to be wrong, and it'd be a good job that you have kept it in here to keep it away from infecting your other birds. A good breeder or seller would normally take the bird back within a week if something goes wrong. After that, it's really up to you. I mean, after a week, if you still got the bird for a week and it's still alive and it dies after a week, and really it's probably down to, they'll probably just say, look, you know, you've had the bird a week, etc. But someone fair would probably just give you your money back. So anyway, after you've done all your checks and you know it's safe to put the bird in here, it doesn't mean to say that the bird is still 100%. That's why you're putting them in a quarantine cage, to keep an eye on them. I like to get a poo sample, a fresh dropped poo sample, and I'll put it under the microscope and I will check for ages to make sure there's nothing in there. Then a couple of hours later I'll wait for another one, and I'll do it about 3 or 4 times during the day, and I will do it for every single bird that I get, and I'll check them at least 3 to 4 times a day just to make sure that there's nothing in there that looks suspicious. Right, you're going to want something like scaly cream just in case as backup, because if you do get a bird it's it might have like a scaly top of the beak, it looks a bit funny, or you might have small, if you looked at it with a microscope, with one of these, and you looked at the beak very, very carefully, sometimes you can see the holes if there is anything like that, and that's caused by the scaly mites. And you can also check their legs and feet as well for scaly feet. They're exactly the same. So the mite they get on their face can be the same they get on their feet. So it just basically works from their feet upwards. So it's always handy to have that just in case they do. I mean, it's very rare you do get them. It's only if you buy a bird from a poor quality breeder, that's when you need that. Another thing as well is when you buy a bird, always check their claws. Make sure they're not too long, because if they're long, then you're going to need a pair of clippers. Now, just regular nail clippers, and then if it's too long at the top, you trim it. So you trim the top part so it matches the bottom. If the bottom part is too far out, then you trim the bottom part so it's the same length as the top. So the top and bottom should be the same, if you understand what I'm saying. But you have to be careful as well, make sure you don't get the tongue. I mean, it's not very often it happens, but it can. So make sure the bird's beak is closed when you do it, and then nip it. That's always the best way to do it. And same with the toenails as well, make sure they're not too long. I will make a video later on trimming nails and beaks, so it's just something I thought I'd bring up, because a few people's asked me if I've done any videos on nail trimming and beak trimming. I said no, not yet, but I will. Anyway, moving on. What I wanted to say, when you first get your bird, you're going to want to give them some precautionary treatments. You're going to want to give them something like this. This is Expel. This is a herbal wormer. The reason why I like a herbal wormer, it does get rid of pretty much all the worms, and I've got to say this is a very good stuff. The reason why I use this is because if I've got the birds on wormer and I discover something else comes up, like the bird may have a protozoa disease, and I don't realise it until a couple of days into the treatment of this, I can still give them another medicine while I'm giving them this, because this is only herbal wormer, so this doesn't actually have any effect on the other drugs that I'm using, if I do using any other drugs. Also, I will give them this as well. This is an anti-mite. This is a spray, and what I will do with this, I always give them this regardless. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they've got anything or not. I'll catch the bird up and I'll hold its wings out. And what I do is down there on the feathers, I give it one spray on the feathers underneath, and then one spray under the feathers underneath there. Because the mites don't sit on top of the feathers. They're always hiding underneath where they're safe. Well, they think they're safe until they get this on them. So I give them one pump under there, under the wing, one pump under the other wing on the actual feathers itself. Not the armpits, it's the actual feathers, and then I'll give them one spray down the breast and one on the back for each bird, and then I'll put them into the cage and that's done. And also with that and that, this is Ivermectin. Now a lot of people ramble on about this scat, and this is to treat them for air sac mites. Now I don't rate scat, and I'm speaking from my own experience. I'm not trying to say people in the USA or Canada who's using it, they've pretty much got a little choice, because there's not really much else to use there from what I've been told. It seems to be the most popular. I thought it was a load of rubbish, to be honest. It just didn't work for me. I gave my birds scat and they still had mites. It just didn't work. And I went out and bought this. This is Ivermectin. This is 100% proper Ivermectin. And again, but that was with the wormer, so I can use those two together. And what I've done, it's the same way as scat, or S76. You just one drop on the back of the neck. It's no good giving a drop under the wing or on the leg. It's rubbish. It doesn't work. It needs to be, all the vital veins are in the neck. Yeah, everything's all the main arteries are in the neck. So that's where you're aiming for. You need it on the back of the neck, and you need one drop. The trouble is with this stuff, it's effective. It does work quite quickly. But if you've got a large flock of birds, there's a problem. If you've bought, I don't know, say you've just bought a large flock of birds, say 20, 30 birds, as some people do, you know, or you need to treat all the birds in your aviary. That means you've got to catch every single bird. Can you imagine that stress? You've got to go in there and you're forever chasing all these birds around. And say you've got like 100 birds, which some people do. I mean, I had close to 250 birds. And can you imagine going in there and chasing every one, catching them, and putting one drop in the back of the neck, letting it go, catching another one, doing the same all day, you know? And then a week later, you've got to do it again. And then the week later after that, you've got to do it again for a third time, you know, just to treat them for mites. This stuff's expensive. I mean, if you buy bottles in England, it's about £17 or £18 a bottle. And that's just for a 50. I think it's enough for 50 drops or 50 millilitres or something like that. It's very expensive. I have a better solution. This is what I use, and I've seen people's jaws drop when I've shown what I use. This is what you call eQuest, and yes, it is a horse wormer. This is for horses. But if you know what you're doing, you can use this instead of using that. And see, I only keep these, just these two here, I only keep them for the video. I don't use this myself. I really don't use them at all. So this is just for people who are starting out and they don't know what else to use, you know, that's just the basic stuff, but this is what I use. This is eQuest from the box I've just shown you. Obviously you won't use it. There's enough in there to treat thousands of birds, thousands and thousands, probably about 4,000 or 5,000 birds, probably more than that actually. And how this works is that you mix up a solution and then you put it in their drinking water for 24 hours. That's all you do. You put it in there for you put this stuff into their drinking water for 24 hours. You put it in their bath as well. And then 24 hours later, you take it out, and that's it. You don't have to give them no touching the birds, no chasing them. You don't have to touch a single bird. You just put it in their water. Next day, you take it out, wash the dishes out, and put fresh water in there. And this stuff stays in their blood system for up to 30 days. And I've never really found that I need to go back again and give them another treatment. I've never had to go back and say, I think they've still got mites. It just doesn't happen, and I don't need to give them another treatment. So, I mean, if it don't work the first time, there's something wrong, something else wrong with your birds. And this stuff not only does the air sac mites, it does any parasite that lives off the blood. It also, because of the ingredients in there, it's I'm trying to remember what it's called now. That's it, because the writing's so small. Have a look what's on the packet. I know it's got moxidectin. It's moxidectin. Well, it's a 12.12 gram syringe gel, and it's 18.92 milligrams of moxidectin and 37.84 milligrams of benzyl alcohol, and it also has 0.24 milligrams of disodium edietate. I'm not sure what that is, but I know that this stuff will worm them. It gets rid of all the worms. It gets rid of any lice and mites, parasites and stuff like that that live off the blood. It gets rid of air sac mites, and it also gets rid of things like gizzard worm, roundworm, ringworm, tapeworm, pretty much everything. So this is really good stuff. And because most people have no idea how to use this, I've decided I'm going to show you. Now, I will tell you, this stuff does not dissolve very easily, and it's very important that when you mix it, it must be mixed well. The first thing you need to do is get yourself a kettle, boil the water. When the water is boiled, leave it for half an hour. Must be half an hour, because if you get it before, it's going to be too hot, and it must be. It's no good having it when it's just lukewarm. It needs to be really warm, but not too hot. If you can't pick it up in your hands, it's too hot. And if it feels too cold or just warm, and it's no good. It needs to be mid, not too hot. That's going to cook it. Anyway, I get a jar like this. This is just a little spice jar, and this had oregano in it. And I did give it a wash out and sterilise before I used it, but it doesn't matter because it's oregano, and birds can quite happily eat oregano. And just for the record, oregano is probably one of the only herbs which is a little saviour to your birds, especially if it's fresh, because it kills Giardia. It kills it on contact, so it's really good for your birds. Anyway, what I will do, I take the end of the tube off, and I'll get a tape measure, which I don't have with me, but it doesn't matter. And I will squeeze out of this tube, I don't know if you can see, I will squeeze out about 6 millimetre, and I'll measure it. I'll get a tape measure and measure from the tip of that tube to the tip of the gel. Yeah, the amount of gel that comes out must measure 6 millimetre. You could probably go to 7, but I definitely would not go more than 7, because 7 would probably be a bit too powerful. And then what I would do is I'll take the lid off, and then what I would do is I'll bang that into the thing, make sure it's all off. And then what I'll do is I'll get the kettle, and then I'll fill it up 3/4 of the way. Finish with that now. I've filled it up 3/4 of the way, and then I'll put the lid on and shake it, and I'll continuously shake for a good 10 minutes. Just keep twisting it and shaking it, whatever way you like. It doesn't really make any difference. And then I'll let it settle for a couple of minutes and look at it under the light. Just swirl it and make sure there's no little bits floating around. If there is, carry on shaking. You need to shake it until all of it is dissolved. And when it is dissolved, get yourself a nice sterilised 2-litre jug or bottle. I use a milk carton which is being sterilised. And then I'll put all the contents of that into there. I'll empty the lot in there. And then I'll fill that right up to the brim with cold tap water, and I'll keep filling it up until I've got all of it out into there. And then what I'll do when I'm happy that all of that is being emptied and thoroughly rinsed out into there, I will fill that all the way up so it makes up to 2 litre. You can go a little bit over if you like. And then I'll shake it obviously with the lid on. I'll shake it like mad, and then I'll shake it for probably about a good 10 minutes again. It takes about 20 minutes, half an hour to really prepare it, but it's worth it. And then when it's done, all I do is I put it in their drinkers, and I'll put it in their baths, and I'll time it. If I put it in 6 or 7 o'clock today in the morning, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'll take it all out, so that I know that they've had the stuff in there for 24 hours. And I guarantee you, if your birds have been like clicking or wheezing overnight and it's been caused by air sac mites or any other kind of parasitic mite, this stuff, it pretty much knocks them dead in no time. You'll probably find within the first couple of hours you'll see the first signs. So that is one thing I did want to cover. So now you know how to do it. And once you've done that and you take them off the next day, you don't have to give them probiotics. Just give them water, and that should be it. There should be no problems at all. And then you won't need to treat them again for a good 3 months, 4 months. I mean, I've got a way of not having to give it to them for 6 months before, and I try to treat my birds as little as possible. I don't want to keep medicating them and etc. But this stuff I would always give to the new birds that I bring in, just to be on the safe side, so that I know that they've had all their treatments, precautionary treatments, and there's not going to be any problems. Right, when I first get them, after they've had the moxidectin, I like to give them the next day. What I like to do is give them the next day, it's just water. After that, the day after, this is liquid calcium. I'll get a 1 litre jug or 1 litre bottle, sterilised, and I'll squeeze out 5 millilitre of liquid calcium into the container, and then I'll also squeeze out 5 millilitres of amino acids. Amino acids is very important. It helps with digestion, and the calcium will help with, especially if they're hens, strengthening their bones, their beaks, their toenails. Also, if they're producing eggs, it toughens them up. So that they do need that anyway as part of their diet. And this stuff's very important. A lot of people don't bother buying this, and I find since I've been using this, the birds seem to be a lot stronger. They just seem more fertile, and they're just generally a much stronger bird. So, and I don't really get many illnesses with them. In fact, I can't remember the last illness I had. So I put 5 millilitres of each of that, and then I'll put 1 drop of this. So that's 5 millilitres of calcium, 5 millilitres of amino acids, 1 drop of this. Add all 3 to 1 litre of water, and then I'll give that to them for 1 day. The next day, I'll just give them vitamin drops, and then the next day I'll give them plain water. The next day I will give them no iodine at all, because I only give the iodine once a week. I'll give them 5 ml of that and 5 ml of that towards a litre of water again. So it's basically, they only get that twice a week, the calcium, and they get the calcium and amino acids they get twice a week. Once a week they get the iodine, and in between each day I'll give them the vitamin drops, and I try to give them 2 days as well break, so they just got plain water if I can. It's very important that they have that break where they're not on something, they just need to be just plain water. I mean, they do take up quite a lot of vitamins and minerals, etc. But it's, I think I've covered most of the stuff anyway. So anyway, I was trying to make the video as quick as I could and as detailed as I could. So I'll try to cover a few things what other people wanted me to cover. The next video will be about how I make my egg food. So that should be quite interesting. I am looking forward to making it, and I am not making forward to making the video, but it'll be a bit of fun. But if you haven't got a dehydrator and you want to make egg food, you're probably better off going out to buy just a cheap food dehydrator. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. So anyway, I think I'll end that video here, and if you've got any other comments, just leave them down on the comment line, or you can get me on the Finch Keeper, which is on Facebook, or the Gordian Finch group, which is again on Facebook. So and so I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.